This episode is brought to you by Tools and Weapons, a podcast hosted by Microsoft Vice Chair and President Brad Smith. In it, global leaders discuss the promise and peril of the digital age, from environmental sustainability and cybersecurity to ethical AI. Guests like journalist Kara Swisher and Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella share lessons from their past to reframe some of society's toughest challenges and seek new solutions. Follow Tools and Weapons with Brad Smith on Spotify now.
Have you ever noticed how a calm mind can really set the stage for a good night's sleep? That's the idea behind our new podcast, Good Sleep. Greg, our host from Optimal Relationships Daily, is here to help ease you into a peaceful night's rest with some positive affirmations. And these affirmations aren't just comforting. They can help ease anxiety and nurture positive thoughts, setting you up for true good sleep. So press play on Good Sleep tonight, because a good tomorrow starts with a good night's sleep. Just search for Good Sleep in your podcast app and be sure to pick the one from Optimal Living Daily. This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 2462, Wealth Advice That Should Be Obvious, Part 1, by Mr. Money Mustache of MrMoneyMustache.com. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. Now I have a bit of a longer post. I'll read the first half today and then finish the rest for you tomorrow. So let's dive into the first half and start optimizing your life. Wealth Advice That Should Be Obvious, Part 1, by Mr. Money Mustache of MrMoneyMustache.com. We've been having a lot of fun around here and thus straying into topics that are only loosely related to building financial freedom. These lessons can be handy since getting rich is only the first baby step in living a long and prosperous life. After all, if you adopt a Mustachian ethos fairly early, you'll spend most of your life in a permanent bath of surplus money, and thus your challenges and growth opportunities will lie in areas other than the financial. But still, all this big thinking can cause us to gloss over the details a bit, and we don't want to lead any new arrivals astray. With that in mind, this article will serve as a review of some of the basic principles that we don't usually cover, because to many people, they are already obvious. Listen to them and see if they are already obvious to you. Number 1, you don't try to gamble your way to wealth. I read a fascinating article about the state lottery system the other day. It described life in the small, low-income towns and rural areas throughout the U.S. People struggle from paycheck to paycheck, frequently encounter medical bankruptcies, and almost everyone in town buys a load of lottery tickets every week. You gotta be in it to win it. When my numbers finally come up in the Powerball, I'm gonna get my life turned around. And other such tragically misinformed nonsense. A similar phenomenon occurs in Las Vegas and on every cruise ship on the planet. People feed their hard-earned little green employees into the slots and cashiers of these rigged games, impoverishing themselves and enriching the sneaky owners with mathematical certainty. So let's just put all of this to an end right now. You never ever gamble if your goal is to get richer. It's as simple as that. Most gamblers and lottery winners I've quizzed believe in superstitious concepts like luck and magic numbers. They don't exist. Every single person on the planet is equally lucky and just as likely to lose money in rigged games of chance. The only way to win is to not play. The only way to get lucky in life is to understand the odds in all areas and place your own chips on the side where they are in your favor. Gambling and lotteries are actually a double whammy of loss. You're sticking your fingers into the spinning blades of poor odds, and you're handing over psychological control of your wealth to something out of your control. You're making yourself the victim. I will become rich if the system decides I will, and otherwise I'll remain poor. It's the wrong way to think. Here's how to get rich. Earn as much as possible, waste as little as possible, and invest the difference. And no, investing doesn't mean buying a hot tech or penny stock because you think it will triple. That's just gambling again with only slightly better odds. Number 2, windfalls are for buying freedom, not jet skis. Almost every hardworking person ends up with a lucky break or two in his or her lifetime. You might get a raise or a bonus at work, a hefty insurance settlement for cosmetic hail damage on your car, a gift or an inheritance from family or friends. Most people promptly go out and spend these windfalls. Thank you for your generous gift. I took my lady out to the restaurant we thought we would never visit. The annual bonus was hefty this year, and I'll remember it every time I see this new Infiniti G37X sitting in my driveway. Shoes, shoes, and more shoes, and other such blunders. No, none of it. When you get a windfall, it goes straight to your highest interest debt, or your mortgage, or to buy your next chunk of index funds or your next rental house. Why would you inflate your lifestyle when you haven't even bought your freedom yet? Windfalls should be viewed as giant Groupon discounts on freedom itself. For a windfall over $5,000, you may get yourself one gourmet coffee or a Chipotle burrito, but that's about it. Number 3, you don't buy shit you can't afford. I can afford it and I deserve it is a common refrain from people with high incomes and virtually no savings. So just a couple of reminders on how to tell if you can afford something. If you're in any sort of debt emergency, you probably can't yet afford it. If you still have to work for a living and would prefer to have a choice in the matter, the diagnosis is the same. Occasionally, we'll all break this rule if something's really important to us. But in general, it's a good guideline. It helps you avoid things like buying a new car or that $3,000 set of cobalt blue LG laundry machines on credit. Number 4, you don't buy you don't need. A more gentle version of rule number 3 is to really think about what it means to need something. For example, on a recent trip to Ecuador, my heart was captured by a very manly drinking flask made of leather and animal horns and emblazoned with a bad South American face. Gasp was my first response. This thing is perfect. I must have this. I could fill it with wine and sling it over my shoulder for the weekly Longmont bike night. I would be considered hilarious and become more popular with this product. I indulged the fantasy, felt the temptation wash over me, then proceeded to not buy the flask. Why? Because I didn't go to Ecuador in search of a flask. Digging deep into my past, I realized that I have never felt that my life was lacking in any way due to the absence of a carved leather and horns drinking flask. And I distinctly remember being perfectly happy in the recent past without owning one of these things. I also remembered the storage room in my basement filled with other cool objects I never use yet still seem to have a hard time parting with. Every material object must be looked upon as a lifelong burden. Will its benefits outweigh the lifelong burden? Consider carefully. To put this principle into profitable practice, just remember this rule. You never ever go shopping. You go to the grocery store and get stuff for salads and the healthiest meals you can dream up. And that's it. For everything else, you start a list. Replacement parts for the broken faucet, a new pair of hiking boots next year because your old ones only have a few hundred miles of hiking left in them. And eventually, when the items on the list become urgent, you go on a fast and targeted mission to buy only that item. Then you return and cleanse yourself with a hot shower to wash off the shopping juice. Other things you never need to buy: bottled water, packaged desserts and convenience foods, soda, juice, status watches, jewelry, and anything ever found in a gift shop. Number 5. Hear that on tomorrow's episode. You just listened to part 1 of the post titled Wealth Advice That Should Be Obvious by Mr. Money Mustache of MrMoneyMustache.com.
This episode is brought to you by Tools and Weapons, a podcast hosted by Microsoft Vice Chair and President Brad Smith. In it, global leaders discuss the promise and peril of the digital age, from environmental sustainability and cybersecurity to ethical AI. Guests like journalist Kara Swisher and Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella share lessons from their past to reframe some of society's toughest challenges and seek new solutions. Follow Tools and Weapons with Brad Smith on Spotify now.
ABC Friday.
It just takes one great idea to change your life.
Shark Tank returns for its 15th season.
I didn't know I was going to cry right now.
With new guest sharks, Jason Blum of Blumhouse, Michael Rubin of Fanatics, and Candace Nelson of Sprinkles Cupcakes.
I'm going to make you an offer.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
I've never seen anything like this on Shark Tank.
This season is a 15.
I totally believe in you.
Shark Tank premieres Friday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
I think Mr. Money Mustache gets a lot of criticism for being overly frugal, and even this article has that flavor of restriction. But what I get out of it is encouragement to question consumerism. There's an assumption that buying XYZ and numbing ourselves with modern conveniences will make us happier. But if this level of consumerism leads us to live paycheck to paycheck, it will keep us trapped in the long run, and it won't lead to sustainable happiness. When I think about building wealth, it's about buying time and freedom over buying stuff. We all know that we need to live below our means if we're going to have any success with our finances. But I think the key to actually doing that is learning how to enjoy it. We need to desire time freedom more than material luxuries. This is a tall order, though. We've spent our entire lives desiring material abundance, so we almost have to brainwash ourselves in the other direction. I bring this up because I just don't think it's sustainable to be frugal if you don't enjoy it. Perhaps you have a season of life like getting out of debt where you make some sacrifices, but if you constantly feel restricted over long periods of time, it's likely you'll give up on your financial goals. But that's just the first half of this post. We'll finish the rest tomorrow. So for now, have a happy rest of your day, and I'll see you on the Thursday show where your optimal life awaits.